Hello, welcome to the quarterfinals episode of the 2020 KeSpa Cup reviews. I'm LinkingX2 and thank you for coming by. On today's fifth day of games, the teams NS, Liiv Sandbox, GenG A Academy and Hanhwa Live are facing each other in best of 3 series. If you like the content you see, consider liking and subscribing, but now getting right into the first game of the first series. Between NS and Liiv Sandbox we see Aatrox vs GP, Echo vs Jarvan, Syndra vs Orianna and Samira Rakan vs KeSa Alistar. Starting in the top lane, GP, well, he can build a lead from early levels, but if Aatrox gets support or can land some good Qs, he, like many bruisers, could run over the pirate, but that's not to be expected. Gangplank with his Q can bully the Aatrox quite easily. Echo vs Jarvan. Echo, while scaling better and liking to gank earlier or about the same time as Jarvan, provides no engage or frontline for his team, but high damage on his part. Echo also needs more farm and more gold, but he also farms faster, which is something. Considering the top 2 vs 2, it is in NS favor, the mid 2v2 as well. Jarvan's CC, especially against Syndra, is very good and they could blow up Syndra. Also the duo of their ultimate abilities are very painful for her, but Echo is just on average the better skirmisher. Also in a true 2v2, NS has here the lead. In the mid lane, we have a very common matchup we already talked about a lot, Orianna vs Syndra. Nothing really going on here, besides farming and looking for 2v2s with the jungler, maybe setting up a gank, but overall a very non-interactive lane. Coming to the bot lane, the 2 AD carries, they want to farm, while Samira with Rakan is playing more aggressive. KeSa Alistar has the early push though, due to KeSa having the AoE abilities. As Rakan is such a red aggressive support, Alistar, who is roaming, has to be roaming less to defend his carry. Talking a bit over the bans we saw here, we saw a bit more of the power pick bans on blue side, and then later we saw banning counter picks towards the Aatrox in the Jace and Camille. On the other side, limiting the jungle pool for Peanut in the first ban phase, and then banning mid laners obviously in Sylas and Galio. So yeah, nothing all too outstanding in the ban department. Talking overall about the game and what we're going to expect. Sandbox level 6 wombo teamfight combo is quite good and very potent, and as on the other side, a skirmish heavier one who wants to fight messy, probably in the jungle, with decent teamfight abilities. Sandbox scales better while having multiple threats and wave clear options. In the fights we see Sandbox shooting with their ultimate loaded gun. If they hit the 2 carries of NS, they very possibly win. If they do not, in the aftermath, Echo and Samira can very easily clean them up with the resets or the high mobility of the Echo. They have the scaling lead as I alluded to, so they don't have to be so hasty with firing their ultimates. If they do, they need to coordinate it well, as not only NS can be quite slippery, but they can also punish a failed engage with their lots of damage. In the end, NS was able to get the win here and lead the series 1-0. In game number 2, we have Ornn, Graves, Zoe, Ezreal, Leona facing off Gragas, Kindred, Galio, KeSa and Nautilus. In the top lane, we have a tank-on-tank matchup. One would assume Gragas has a lead here, but no, Ornn has this one, or at least he's in control and is out-trading Gragas. So Gragas, obviously he has to avoid the trades, but otherwise he can be quite fine. In the jungle, we have 2 farming junglers. Graves has a small advantage in my opinion, but good Kindred players can be fine. If anyone gets the jump though on the other, they are usually dead. Considering the 2v2s, the top lane one is irrelevant, and the mid lane 2v2, I have to say, NS has it easier, but if Sandbox is playing it correctly, they can obviously do quite well here as well. Coming to the mid lane, Galio is well being punished and bullied in this case, but can follow up on Kindred very nicely. And overall, as he is the anti-mage tank, he should be quite fine in the end, losing a few CS here and there though. In the bot lane, Ezreal, Leona vs KeSa Nautilus. We have talked about it a bit in previous episodes, so short form is about this. KeSa has good wave clear, and with a good support, she can try to get the early shove, but Ezreal, as he's safer and usually stronger in the early stages, can catch up quite easily. Nautilus and Leona only know how to fight, and that suits Leona more in many cases. Here though, because of KeSa's passive and Ezreal's probable tier start in the very early stage, NS has more advantages in the bot lane overall. Considering the bans, we see the Aatrox ban versus Rich and Olaf bans versus Peanut, pinching the support pool in the second half. On the other side, we see OP picks being banned, and then banning remaining AD carries, so nothing all too special here, just the usual bans and then some target bans. Sandbox has the lead from top to bottom come the 13th minute, aka first item power spike. And take it from there, they should. Kindred, especially KeSpa, does scale very well, and their overall teamfight is very good. NS has the tall order to get picks onto this very slippery team, which also is poking and slowing them down from range. But if NS is able to get into it, and then with their CC and tanks will squish the Sandbox roster, Ornn and Leona are not really well known as protective champions and can't do much to save Zoe from a Krager's Barrel or Galio ult. Also, Zoe's burst can be avoided or rendered a bit less harmful through a good Kindred ult, so while Sandbox is on the road to victory from draft and early game, unless misplays happen of course, the road does not have any guardrails, meaning NS could knock them off their potential serious tie. In this game, Sandbox is able to get the lead early and use it to get the win overall and tie the series, as we alluded from draft. Coming to the final game, game number 3, Ornn vs Shen in the top lane, Hecarim vs Graves, Echo vs Syndra in mid, and Samira Rakan vs KeSpa Alistar down below. In the top lane we have two tanks, both chill and have similar wave clear. Shen can support his team more, KeSpa, Graves and Syndra if need be, while Ornn obviously is the late game team fighter for his team, also offering a bit more frontline potential than the Shen. Heca vs Graves, Heca beats him in the 1v1, farming is around even between the two. In the 2 vs 2, well, top lane again mostly irrelevant, while the mid one is in NS favor. Hecarim also scales fine, so does Graves, but Hecarim I feel he offers more than just damage for his team, while Graves is of course the very powerful jungle pick at the moment, Hecarim being a bit more situational. Echo vs Syndra, not much to say, it's a well-known counter pick for the Echo into the Syndra, even his skirmish ability is very nice. And Graves lacking so much MR is a good target for the Echo as well. In the bot lane we had the exact matchup in game 1, but I might add that Rakan is more slippery and squishy than Alistar, but both want to roam in teamfight. In lane Alistar can punish Rakan if he randomly engages with a knock-up and then headbutt into his own turret. That's a bit more information here, but we already talked about the exact same one here. We see the bans again. A bit strange again to see the OP or very powerful picks banned on blue side. And then on the other side, jungles against Peanut and rich Aatrox again. Overall, NS not only has a good late game teamfights, but even their skirmishes are very good. Lots of CC, different damage sources, very slippy members, while Sandbox has more stationary damage dealers, and also NS scaling is better, which means NS needs to get ahead through some more tricky means and clever tricks in the early game, maybe use some roams from the Cow and Ninja. Shortly summarizing this, Sandbox need to be very creative and start very early to get ahead, otherwise skirmishes and team fights they will just suffer and come late game. Yes, they have some decent champs, but overall NS and their comp are just better in that department. In the end, NS is able to get the series win. In this last one they got ahead early, and even though they had some inty plays here and there, they just team fought to victory as was expected from draft. So NS wins the series 2-1, not too clean, but overall were the more dominant team. Leaving the first series behind, a quick reminder to like and comment if you have enjoyed it so far. It's just one click and it really helps out a lot. But coming to the second and last best of 3 here, GenG Academy vs Hanhwa Liiv, starting game number 1, Renekton, Nidalee, Yone, Misfortune and Leona facing off Ornn, Graves, Orianna, KeSpa and Maokai. The top lane matchup, the very common one, so not going into that. Similarly, Nidalee vs Graves, well already had that at Worlds million times, so the top 2v2 obviously here in GenG's favor, but the Ornn, well, who wants to target the Ornn? If you dive Ornn, he more than often enough kills the Nidalee because she's so very squishy, so hopefully GenG does not do this, as well as the mid lane 2v2, Nidalee Yone against Graves Orianna. It's a bit more even here, because Graves Orianna is a very good combination, and Yone will have the HP disadvantage, but obviously Nidalee Yone have more burst damage, as such they could one-shot a single target and then focus 2-on-1 against the other, so I give GenG a small lead here, but it's about even as well. Talking about the mid lane already, Yone Orianna, Yone will be harassed, will be pushed in, Normally he can push okay because of his, well, mobility through E, his AoE abilities, and obviously the no mana push. Orianna though bullies melee champions very hard due to her Q and her auto attack passive, so the push and CS and HP lead, as I said before, will be in her favor, and even more so if you look at the player. In the bot lane, MF Leona, very strong bot lane. Maokai is a bit of the nuisance for them, but otherwise they are handily in late. Deft may cause the CS to be more even than it should be, and after level 6 Maokai can get to MF more easily than the Leona, but I have to say, with both AD carries having cleansed, this bot lane will mostly consist of MF getting a few more CS than Deft, but nothing major more. In the bans we don't see anything too spectacular, mostly banning powerful picks, and then on the other side in the second half we see the option of banning the more poke related champions that would combine very well with Nidalee, for example. Hanhwa Liiv of course outscales, but even their early and mid game isn't all that bad. Ori wins mid lane, Ornn is completely fine, and Graves, he's probably the best jungler at the moment in all stages. All while bot lane should be totally okay, not winning as I said, but again not losing too hard. GenG need to use their strong picks in top and bot to snowball ahead, as they don't have much engage to force their lead. I would recommend focusing on neutrals to bait, and with the Dragon Soul later then force fights, while the Heralds power up their snowball. The dragons could offer them an insurance for the late game. If though they don't get ahead and play too passively, they will have a ton of problems come the around 25-27 plus minute fights. In the end they aren't able to do that. They're able to secure some objectives but not enough, and Hanhwa Liiv is able to get the win. They had some struggles around the 20-25 minute mark, but after that GenG wasn't able to finish or control the game enough, and Hanhwa Liiv just ran them over. Coming to the second game, GenG looking for a tie and Hanhwa Liiv looking for the finish obviously. We see Malphite, Hecarim, Orianna, Samira, Leona facing off Gragas, Graves, Irelia, Kai'Sa and Maokai. In the top lane, again a tank on tank matchup, nothing really happening here. Both have options to bully the other, but they're just two tanks bashing their heads against each other. Gragas has the ability to wave clear a bit more easily from range, but there's no need to do that. Coming to the jungle, we just had it today in the last game of NS versus Sandbox, so not diving into that. Again, remember the top lane 2v2 with the two tanks is often so irrelevant. In the mid lane, talking about that, Irelia, again she has the pressure here, but with the player skill, Orianna is probably completely safe here, farming under her tower, using the early power around the first few levels to maybe shove in Irelia, but otherwise later on Irelia can nearly always threaten the kill. Combine that now with the jungle combination, Hecarim Orianna has quite a bit of damage, but only after level 6. Graves Irelia a bit more skirmish heavy, and with Irelia having the control in lane, this one should also be on GenG's side. In the bot lane we again had nearly the same one last game, with the only change being Samira, who is worse than MF in lane, and the Kai'Sa Maokai combo now is in the lead here. Samira also shorter range than MF, so she's more susceptible to Maokai and some random Kai'Sa poke. So here the lead is again on GenG's side. Looking over the bans, Talia, Misfortune, Lucian, banning some AD carries quite early, otherwise nothing all too spectacular. Overall, this time both team comps have some good scaling, while Hanhwa Liiv has the easier comp to play. GenG has means to play around Hanhwa Liiv's teamfight, for example in the Irelia split push, obviously winning against the Malphite and even more so against the Orianna inside. In the early game and mid game both teams don't really want to do all that much. Hanhwa Liiv has the easier option to teamfight for neutral objective, while GenG has some nicer skirmishing abilities in smaller fights. If either team is able to snowball and get ahead, due to them both scaling, they can keep their lead. For Hanhwa Liiv, they just have the tools for a comeback in late game teamfights, as I said, with their ultimate abilities. So GenG, even if ahead, they have to respect Hanhwa Liiv's 5-on-5 potential. The only X factor they really have for comebacks or greater fights is the Gragas cast onto the Orianna or Samira for an insta delete of either of them. In the end, they're not able to do that and are losing team fights, which results in the Hanhwa Liiv win. While GenG was getting the early game lead, the late game team fights around the Samira showed why she is quite OP. and shouldn't really be left open. That's it. Thanks for watching. In the playlist you can find the previous KeSpa Cup review episode, or maybe you're interested in other off-season content as well that you can find in the playlist, the description below, or overall on my channel. Tomorrow you can expect the semi-final review, including the best of 5 between Damwon and Hanhwa Live, as well as KT and NS. Hope you had a good time. If you did, please leave a like or comment. Again, it really helps out a lot and would really make my day. That's it for now though. Please stay safe, have some great days. Till next time, bye.